Hello, Garu and Naga Toro. Enjoyers, rejoice as we are getting two amazing Garus with the addition of Naga and Tia. Oh boy, I hope your reserves are still intact from the few limited Nikkes that we got recently, considering also that anniversary is right around the corner and we also had Marciana quite recently. Man, thinking about anniversary, time sure flies, hey? Anyways, without further ado, let's go right into her skills. Now, for her skills, Naga is a electro-coated mag shotgun burst to 20-second Nikke. Her skill 1, Guardian of Friendship, activates after 12 no more attacks and affects all allies. It recovers the cover HP by 14.57% for all of them, and also activates a second effect when you apply shield, and it affects all of the allies, increasing the damage dealt when attacking the core by 85.17% for 10 seconds. Her second skill, Support of Friendship, activates after 5 normal attacks and affects 2 ally units with the highest attack. This means that it will target your strongest Nikkes most of the time. It increases the damage when attacking the core by 40.07% for 5 seconds, and also has a second effect for the 2 allies with the lowest HP, which is kind of a smart heal in a sense. It recovers 9.58% of the caster's final max HP as HP after doing 5 normal attacks. Her burst skill, as long as we're with friends, affects herself and grants her peers for 10 seconds, which is quite a long time, affects all allies as well, giving them 16.18% of the caster's attack for 10 seconds. This is very important, caster's attack. And also, when you have a shield applied, it will also affect all allies with an attack increase of 31.02% of the caster's attack for 10 seconds. This is based on her own attack, not the target's attack. This is very important to keep in mind. Now, on to the question of should you pull. First, let's dispel a misconception. I will also be dispelling it yet again on Tia's video, but that's besides the point. Tia and Naga are not the second coming of Bunnygirls. It's a little bit of a YouTube game thing to call it like that to attract attention. The reality is they are quite strong. They are even more inflexible than the bunnies in many regards of where you can use them and which fights they're actually very effective in. Now, we will see that a little bit more in the in-depth analysis, but for now, to dispel that misconception is they will be stronger than Bunnygirls in a specific niche, and outside of that specific niche, they will be weaker than the Bunnygirls, no questions asked. Now, to answer the question, should you pull? Yes. She's a very strong Nikke that may even be Union Raid worthy for certain fights and scenarios. Now, this is one of the highest praises I can give to a Nikke when I say that they are Union Raid worthy in terms of potential. Is it stronger than Bunnygirls? Only in very specific scenarios, but that will be seen in the in-depth analysis. I will also add that when I say you should pull for them because they're Union Raid worthy in terms of potential, I mean when you combine both of them. It's kind of the same situation as Bunnygirls in that regard, is that to unlock their full potential, you need to have both Tia and Naga. So keep in mind that this should you pull in terms of power level assumes that you're getting both of them. Now, she individually is strong, but not nearly as strong as if you had both Tia and Naga together. Additionally, I will also say that this is more of a add additional tools to your arsenal for solo raid and Union Raid, and possibly even for the main story in many scenarios. But at the end of the day, you gotta keep in mind that if you're very low on reserves and you really want to save for anniversary, they are not limited Nikkes. You can always put them into the wish list and just wait for getting them through the blue regular tickets. They are very strong and I do recommend pulling for them, but it's a matter of balancing your reserves, especially with anniversary right around the corner. Now, onto the specific breakdowns. Nagatoro has a very strong skill 1 that activates every 12 attacks. As Naga is a mag shotgun, just like Marciana, and not a clip shotgun like Pepper, I will be displaying a little bit so that you can see the difference, she will be reloading her magazine to full every single time she reloads, meaning that she spends way more time reloading as a shotgun with 9 ammo capacity as baseline than if she had been something similar to Pepper. All of this translates to every give or take 10 to 12 seconds on average, she will be applying cover recovery to all allies for 14.54%, which is lower than leaders, for example, massive 52.5% for the two lowest covered Nikkes, which is kind of a smart recovery. However, once we take into account the proc rate, which is much faster than leaders, and the fact that it affects all Nikkes, we have on average higher cover recovery than leader, thanks to the fact that she does 1.5 shots per second. Now, the skill having such frequent procs and having the potential of having higher uptime as Naga gains, ammunition overload, synergizes really well with Tia, who she is meant to pair up with. Each time she procs her cover recovery, she will be activating Tia's cover recovery related skills, and it will be very frequent. This skill, however, you have to keep in mind, is not a cover rebuild. It's not like Biscuit, who rebuilds cover once it's broken. It's only cover recovery, which means that once the cover is completely destroyed, it cannot be recovered anymore, and the skill becomes quote-unquote useless. Now, the second portion of the skill is a massive damage dealt increase. The massive is in quotation marks. You will see later why. Because when you attack the core, it amplifies the damage whenever you apply a shield to Naga. What this keyword means is that as long as there is a shield that has been applied, the skill will activate, which is also a very large synergy with Tia, as she will put a lot of shields very frequently, and her shield uptimes are quite good. Now, this is not exclusive to Tia. There are other Nikkes that apply shields, but they are far less effective at doing this. There are, for example, two Nikkes that are 40 seconds on B2 that apply shields, such as Folkwang and Arya. Technically, Senti also applies shields. Technically, Blanc also applies shields, but it is not ideal as they are burst 2 Nikkes, and also they don't have nearly as much shield uptime as Tia. Which means that, of course, the highest synergy is Tia, who she is meant to be paired with. Now, her skill 2 applies a massive, well, quote-unquote massive, 40.07% damage dealt increase when attacking the core for 5 seconds. This skill, needing 5 normal attacks to trigger and has a duration of 5 seconds, means that it will have a near permanent uptime, as it takes 4 seconds to attack 5 times, as it is 1.5 attacks per second with shotgun, while it also takes 1.5 seconds to reload due to being a mag shotgun with 9 ammunition. So once you combine all of that together, it's a very, very close to permanent uptime. Now, the combination of both core damage buffs leads to this gargantuan 125.24% damage up when striking the core. However, don't let this massive number fool you. The real damage increase that it gives, due to how the damage calculation when striking cores actually applies, is quote-unquote only 32.96%. In other words, give or take 33% damage increase. Now, it's still a very, very big damage amplification, but it is so that you guys can keep in mind that core damage up does not translate into raw damage increase, as you can see from this translation of 125% to 33 real percent damage. Now, the key weakness as well of this buff is that it needs an accessible core for your Nikkes to strike, which means that enemies like Nihilister or Modernia or any enemy in the future that has no core to hit renders this portion of the kit absolutely useless. Now, what I mean by cores to hit is you will be wondering why I mentioned Modernia when you have that core. No, the core hits that you need are the ones that when you strike them gives red numbers. As you can see from this short clip, the red numbers are core hits, and you do not have those when you're striking, for example, Nihilister, or for example, when you're striking Modernia. Now, as you can see from the timelines, the procs of both the burst and the shield procs, if you pair her with Tia, will mean that she will basically always be at her strongest when she will be bursting when it comes to the skill buff plus the other buff from the core damage up. The second part of her S2 is a very nice additional healing, as she will be proccing that heal very frequently, as you saw from the fact that it takes 4 seconds to proc. Now, 9.58% of final max HP is very, very decent, as for example, Pepper's last bullet heal is 4.45%. However, that is the baseline, that is without taking into consideration her HP potency. If we were to take Pepper's healing potency and last bullet mechanic combined with her shotgun clip, Pepper still comes out on top once she has fully stacked her potency stacks. It is nonetheless a very nice bonus skill for some additional survivability through sustain, which, let's remind you, cannot be provided by shields, which rounds up very nicely her synergies with Tia or any future shield providing Nikke that she could synergize with. Her burst skill has hilarious implications when it comes to enemies with parts through her shotgun pierce, hitting absolutely everything in sight for 10 seconds. She could become certain bosses that have both breakable parts and cores, such as to some extent Gravedigger, their worst nightmare. Now, there aren't that many Raptors currently that possess both breakable parts to pierce and an easy to shoot core, but it is something to keep in mind. Furthermore, while Chatterbox doesn't have a core, which kind of negates a portion of her kit, her pierce has absolutely hysterical implications due to the fact that you can blow his entire head off. Now, the most important part of her burst is in her ability to buff the attack of allies to a certain spectacular degree. If paired with Tia, she will give a 47.2% attack buff. However, and this is very important, this is based off her own base attack. Thus, if we take only into consideration an attacker Nikke's base attack, the buff is closer to 39%. It's still substantial, but not as strong as it seemed at first glance, and the percentage increase drops off a cliff the more stats we add to the Nikke in question through overload gear and other sources of additional stats such as cubes. Now, it should be noted, however, that the reverse is also true. Nikkes that have low base attack will benefit more from her attack buff. A good example of such Nikkes are 2B or DPS oriented supports and or defenders, such as for example Summer Anis, although the base versus final caveat when it comes to once you start adding gear, overloads, and cubes still stands. All in all, her kit is incredibly strong in certain scenarios, such as needing a modicum of sustain. It's slower than Pepper's last bullet mechanic on its own, and can make use of her damage up as it is a large component of her buffs, meaning having a core to strike. Her attack buffs, though, are not to be underestimated, assuming you can grant shields to your teammates, which is why you really need to pair her, for example, with Tia. She is, unfortunately, due to all of these caveats, far more restricted than the Bunnygirls, and while even when paired with Tia, she is a much more offensive-oriented option than Bunnygirls, the caveats are quite significant. It means that to be able to make full use of their potential, you need to have an enemy that does not destroy cover too quickly, does not single out Tia out of existence, due to the fact that she will be taunting and tanking, and also has a strikeable core that you can make use of, and is also not incredibly far away, although that is a little bit to a lesser degree. A great example of where Tia and Naga will be at their absolute worst is Modernia. She has no core, because again, and I will show the video again, core damage, which is what Naga buffs, is the red hits to the core of a rapture. The core, or quote-unquote core in Modernia's case, is actually a fake core. It's a breakable part, which means that you cannot make use of her skill 1 and skill 2 for a huge chunk of it. Modernia also has this ability where if you do not break her breakable core quickly enough, she will laser beam the entire arena, destroying all of your Nikke's covers instantly. Which means that this also annihilates a huge chunk of Tia's kit as well as Naga's kit, as they are not cover rebuild Nikke, they are cover recovery. Which means that Modernia on her own, with her laser beam and her lack of core, neutralize the entirety, almost the entirety of skill 1 and skill 2 for both Tia and Naga. Now, Bunnygirls versus Modernia would have absolutely no issues whatsoever, because they are not reliant on core and they are not reliant on cover. They have restrictions in the sense that you have to put them together, but when it comes to fighting enemies that do not have those two, they will outclass absolutely Tia and Naga, and essentially will be outclassing them in many fights. Tia and Naga will be stronger than Bunnygirls if all of the conditions are met. Meaning you don't need extreme amounts of healing, meaning you don't have cover destruction that happens way too quickly, and that is not just limited to Modernia. There are laser beam raptors as well that will destroy your cover very quickly. And, well, it also means that you have to compare them as well to other characters. So Tia and Naga are also outperformed when it comes to offensive teams by novel teams, for example, as novel grants a massive damage amplification and you can pair up additional attack up Nikkes. Now, for her synergies, her most obvious synergy is with Tia. While she's not completely restricted to only working with her because she does not have team-related synergy unlike Bunnygirls, she is one of the greatest synergies. Their kits are clearly built to work together in a similar fashion to the Bunnygirls. This synergy allows her to consistently have her shield-related synergies to make full use of her kit, and in return she also grants very consistent cover recovery that allows Tia to use that portion of her kit to a higher degree as well. As mentioned before, if she is paired with Tia, she will always be at her strongest when bursting, in terms of the utility she provides as well as her own damage. Her core damages bonuses benefit greatly Nikkes, such as Modernia, that love continuously just striking the core over and over of her enemies, and her attack buffs for 10 seconds make her a potential teammate for Snow White as well. Now, you have to keep in mind though that it is less damage than say Yulha novel comps, but it also is something that allows for a layer of safety while not having to rely on Bunnygirls, adding more tools to the arsenal. This is a very key word, is that they do not replace meta teams for both Union Raid, Solo Raid, and the like. They're just an additional tool to the arsenal to give you more flexibility, as they are worthy of being compared to them. They can also easily slot into Summer Anis comps, as Naga is electro-coded. While NagaTia don't increase bullets like Bunnygirls, which is very important, they both provide also shielding and sustain, which means that they can also be paired safely with Guillotine or Scarlet, meaning that a electro-coded team with NagaTia and Summer Anis could actually make use of all of this. So you would slot Tia, you would slot a Burst 1 Nikke that does not increase ammo capacity and that can buff the rest of the team to some extent. Then you have Naga, electro-coded shotgun Nikke that will buff all of your allies. And then you have Summer Anis that will buff all the electro-coded Nikkes, including Naga. And then you can just add Guillotine or Scarlet, who will get a certain amount of protection to the shielding of Tia, and a small amount of healing as well, that can just keep them enough alive, as they are Berserker Nikkes, they don't want too much healing, through Naga as well. Now, they also meaning that they can pair with a lot of the meta comms. So for example, Alice has Pierce. You can pair her with NagaTia because Alice can pierce and reach cores that are usually hidden. There exist Raptures where you can only strike the core through Pierce, so Alice can also work with NagaTia in those scenarios. Leader has very strong synergy with them as she provides cover recovery as well as cooldown reduction, and the attack buff pairs well additionally. Now the cover recovery means that she will be able to proc more frequently Tia's own cover related skills. Now for Arena-wise, Naga suffers from being a mag shotgun, meaning that she needs to reload her entire magazine before shooting again, unlike say for example Pepper. However, she can fill some gaps in your compositions. Our shotguns, generally speaking, generate more burst than your average weapon, and her pierce on burst can have some very funny moments. Although she might not be very meta, she will be a good gap filler for teams that are lacking in Nikkes. In Arena, her entire core damage, for example, is completely useless, and depending on whether you pair her with shields, the shield or not, the shield synergies will also be gone, which is a huge chunk of her kit. So you would mostly be using her as a kind of shotgun filler, which means that her arena synergies are very, very simple. If you really need to fill gaps very badly, you can essentially just slot her so that you have a shotgun that generates burst, and if you really, really need to fill gaps even more, you can even pair her with Tia in Arena. Otherwise, generally speaking, just any team that could use a B2 shotgun that can heal a little bit and provide an attack buff is good enough. This will be it for my Naga Hot Take video. Please look forward to the Tia Hot Take video as well that will be coming out pretty soon. I really hope you enjoyed it. The Tia video will also contain a lot of additional information relating to her synergies with Naga, as well as a more in-depth look into her skills, abilities, uptimes, and so on. If you liked the video, please feel free to drop a like, a sub, or a comment to let me know that you would like to see more of this content in the future. With that out of the way, I hope to see you guys on the next video or live on Twitch or YouTube, as I stream almost every day at 9 PM GMT plus 2, which is roughly 1 hour before Nikke reset, and will also be streaming my NagaTia pool, so I really hope to see you guys there, and Aliani out.